guys, how are you all doing? It's your girl Cindy, and I'm back again today with another gist. I trust you guys are doing great, having fun, enjoying life. Thank you so much for clicking to watch this video. Guys, in today's video, we are gonna be looking at this video right here. Now, this white woman has been making tons of videos, addressing Black people and her fellow white people. So she said that she is making this video primarily to her fellow white people, to show them or tell them what she's doing about her inherent racism and white supremacy that she learned in school and in their culture growing up. So I'm going to show you some of her videos. Of course, I saw them on TikTok. I thought I should bring these videos here so we all can see them together. And of course, I'm going to show you screenshots of comments. You all know how we do it here. So before we see her videos, please note that this video is for educational purposes. It is not to bully anyone nor harass anyone, but it's just to create awareness so we all can see and know what is happening on social media, especially on TikTok. Please check her videos out.
This is listening to racism, a practice where I notice my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them. If this frank discussion of racism and white supremacy would be in any way traumatic for you, I invite you and ask that you take exquisite care of yourself and keep swiping and not watch this video. I mainly make these videos for other white people because I want to show other white people what I'm doing to stop my racism and my white supremacist training. And the reason I want to talk to other white people is because I believe that as the people who are perpetrating the racism, we're the only ones who can stop our own racism. And so I reach out to other white people, and I do this not just through TikTok, but through other mediums as well, and through other communities. I have gotten to the point where I've had some amazing conversations with people who, when we sat and broke down our racist thoughts and actions, these people suddenly said, I didn't even realize. And that's how violence works. Some people have said that in order not to traumatize Black, Indigenous, and people of color, I need to just keep this, in my journal and not make it public. And that's why I now have a disclaimer at the beginning of all of my videos, because violence lives in secret, and racism and white supremacy are violence. I'm not going to stop doing these videos, and I'm not going to stop talking about this publicly, but I definitely am going to take into account that for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, hearing me talk about my experiences of being trained in racism and white supremacy could be very upsetting. For the rest of the white people who might be interested in this, I want to say, please join me. We can stop this. Thanks for listening. This is listening to racism, a practice where I notice my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them and so that I can change. If you are a Black person, if you are an Indigenous person, or if you are a person of color who would find my discussion of my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions disturbing, I invite you to skip this video. I was in church today and it was an absolutely beautiful service. I belong to a Black-led church that is predominantly Black membership. Not exclusively, but predominantly. We went to another Black church today for our bishop to preach. And so we were all in this beautiful sanctuary in this other church. I walked in when the choir was singing. It was an absolutely beautiful experience. And one of the things that I thought about was how welcoming everyone was. White supremacy tells me that, my whiteness is normal, and so I am, I should be able to go anywhere I want, right? And it occurred to me that given the fact that I am one of the few white people in the congregation and one of the few white people there, that the people there were showing me incredible grace and kindness and welcoming, considering that white supremacy is such a huge problem. And to see me there, I wonder, does that remind them of that? Do I remind them of that? I love gospel music, and the choir was fantastic and was singing a wonderful song, and I found myself feeling teary and crying, because considering how much harm has been done by whiteness and white supremacy to Black people in particular, it is extraordinary to be so welcomed and to feel loved and cared for. Thanks for listening. This is Listening to Racism, a practice where I notice my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them, so that I can change, and so that I can put love and allyship into action. If you are a Black person, if you are an Indigenous person or a person of color who would be in any way disturbed by my talking about these things, I invite you to please skip this video. I'm listening to a book on Audible right now called Witnessing Whiteness. Basically, whiteness was created so that Europeans would not align themselves with enslaved people. And early in our country's colonial history, white people were enslaved. And then there were laws about, well, you can't enslave Christians. And then it was like, oh, but the Africans are turning Christian. Well, that's not going to work. And so it's just a very interesting breakdown of all the laws that were enacted to separate people from one another, to separate European Americans from Africans, African Americans ultimately, and how to codify enslavement and how to codify race. And I'm not surprised by any of this. I am pissed, though. To me, this is one of the reasons that I am constantly confronted with my own racist thoughts. And that's because these racist ideas and ideals have been in existence for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So every generation of my family that has lived in this country has taken in these ideas. And believe me, I do not come from a very woke stock. I come from white Southern racists. And although they didn't necessarily drum the inferiority of the other into my brain, they definitely did drum into me the supposed superiority of Europeans. As I've experienced personal oppression, trauma, interpersonal violating, is that the oppressor only has to work so hard. But once they've done their work, they can just sit back and watch the person that they wanted to control and coerce oppress themselves. I am definitely not saying that as a white person I am oppressed in as far as my racial identity is concerned. I'm not saying that in the least. What I'm saying is that I have been brainwashed into believing that there's any difference between me and a person of another hue. That there is any difference in our value, in our worthiness to be on the planet. But it's taken me a really long time to notice this shit. It's taken me a really long time to start to comprehend it. And that's because it's just like, it's like if I chewed gum at night and didn't spit it out before I went to sleep, and then I got gum in my hair, like it would be really hard to distinguish the difference between the hair and the gum, because it would be all mashed together so completely that I'd probably just have to cut out a section of my hair. I don't know if I'm being particularly articulate today. I just want to say that I'm learning. And I always want to do better. Not because I want to be a better person. Not because I want to be good. I've said it before, it's because I want to be free. And I want everyone to be free. And freedom, right-wingers and Christian nationalists, does not mean the freedom to oppress. Freedom means the freedom to live. Thanks for listening. When I lived in New York City, one day I saw a white man sitting on the ground, on the concrete next to the door of the deli where I would get my breakfast every morning. And I looked at him and I thought, he must really need help. He's a white man and he's sitting on the ground. He must be in dire straits. Meanwhile, on my walk from the subway, I had passed innumerable black and brown people sitting in very similar postures and situations. But I looked at them and I thought, well, they've brought this on themselves. White supremacy tells me that when a black or brown person is homeless, that it must be their fault. It must be some moral failing that brought them to this place. White supremacy and racism tell me to discount the things that prevent people who are marginalized from being able to fully participate in society. And it's really important for me as a white person to understand there are obstacles put in the way of black and brown people that as a white person I don't have, simply because of the color of my skin. That's not to say that as a non-binary person I don't have obstacles. And that's not to say that that white guy on the sidewalk didn't have obstacles too. But what he didn't have was a society that judged him as being a problem simply because of the color of his skin. Thanks for listening. This is Listening to Racism, a practice where I notice my racist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them. I was just on public transportation. I saw a black man get on the train. I saw him sit down next to a woman. I saw him speak to the man behind the woman, and then I saw him speak to the woman, and then I saw him speak to another woman, and then I saw him speak to another man, and I quickly got the idea that he was asking for something, probably money. So when none of those people were able to give him anything, he got up and started walking in my direction. And I ignored him. White supremacy tells me that a black man panhandling on public transit is not someone that I need to pay any attention to. I can ignore him. And honestly, it was a knee-jerk reaction from years of riding public transportation and seeing time after time people in terrible shape and in need. People who sometimes I could help and sometimes I couldn't. Tonight, though, what strikes me is that I was unwilling to even acknowledge him. I was unwilling to even acknowledge his humanity. And white supremacy and racism tell me I don't have to. He's a black man panhandling on public transit. I don't have to give him the time of day. When I think about the fact that someone who's panhandling is not in the best place in their life, and on top of that, has every disadvantage of being a black man in a white supremacist, racist culture, it seems to me that the least I could do is acknowledge his humanity. I agree to do better. Thanks for listening. This is Listening to Racism, a practice where I notice my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them. I saw my mother today, and she's quite elderly at this point. And one of the things that I remember about her when she was starting to interact with people at the facility where she lives is that every time she saw this one guy who was Filipino, she'd look at him and go, "I'm watching you." And there was something in that interaction from her side that I knew she meant to be funny, but that I know was probably based in racist thinking. The kind of thing where I could imagine my grandfather saying it, jokingly to one of the black janitors who worked at the newspaper where my grandfather worked years ago. So when I think about that, I think about the roots of my own racism and where it comes from and how it's just been passed on from generation to generation. And there's no possible way that I could have been immune to it because we didn't talk about white supremacy as being bad or wrong. Sure, my good liberal parents hated the people in the white robes and the white masks, but it's not like we ever sat down and said, what is racism? Let's talk about racism. Let's really get into the minutia of how it presents. We never did that, and so although I had some idea that racism was bad, I didn't have a full idea of exactly how insidious it was. I didn't have a full idea of what my part in it was. And today it's really important for me to pay attention to that. Because what I'm finding is that when I hear Black, Indigenous, and people of color say it's always about racism, they're right. It is always about racism. Thanks for listening. This is Listening to Racism, a practice where I notice my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them. If you are a Black person, an Indigenous person, a person of color who would find my discussion of my experiences of noticing and stopping my racism disturbing, I invite you to take exquisite care of yourself and please miss this video. I make these videos primarily for other white people because I want to share with you what I have been doing to notice and stop my racism with the hope that you other white people will notice and stop your racism. I don't do this perfectly. I don't purport to do this perfectly. It is all learning. I was just in a meeting where I can't get into specifics, but harm was done to Black people, specifically Black women, verbally. And we were in a meeting today to discuss how we might deal with that as a community. And what happened was white people stood up and said, it wasn't that bad. It didn't happen. It was the other person's fault for feeling hurt. And, we just all have to get over this because we're doing the wrong thing by even discussing it. I'm lucky enough to have all 5 senses. Some people have all 5 senses, some people don't. But however many senses I have, I use those senses to evaluate what I'm experiencing in my immediate environment. If someone comes up to me and slaps me in the face, I register pain. If someone on the street says, nobody hurt you, that slap wasn't that hard. You were standing there with your face wide open. And, if you'd had the opportunity to slap somebody, you would have done that too. That's all the violence of denying, minimizing, blaming, and colluding with someone who decided to violate another human being. And that's what I just saw in this meeting. I saw white people colluding with each other to violate Black and brown and indigenous people. The thing that is really bringing this point home for me is that the last video that I posted was harmful to Black people and Black viewers of my video. And I've ultimately taken it down because it was harmful. How do I know it was harmful? Because Black people told me, this is harmful. Black people told me, you messed up. I'm not the one who gets to decide when someone else is hurt. They do. If someone tells me they are hurt, my job is to believe them. Period. Full stop. So I appreciate that people were willing to say that you were hurt about what I said. And this is an opportunity for me to grow and change, and that's what I do. I grow and I change and I learn. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Now, if you are new to my channel, I talk about racism here. And why I talk about it is because it is still happening in this day and time. And one of the reasons I talk about it is for people who are still practicing it in this 2024 should stop. Work on yourself. Read some books. Watch some videos that would help you. And let the healing start. Let it start from your heart, from your home, by educating your kids. Now, I'm going to tell you just a short story. So my son returned back from school some days ago and he told me, Mom, I hit my teacher. And of course, his teacher is white. And I asked him why. He said, nothing. So I said to him, no, I have told you what you can do with your hands. He said yes, and I asked him to remind me what I told him, and he said you can use your hand to hug, shake, wave and all that. I said, okay, I'm gonna talk to your teacher tomorrow. The next day, I took him to school and I saw the teacher. I said to her, "Oh, my son said he did this to you. Please, I am so sorry. I always tell him this is what you should be doing with your hands and not hit or smack someone." The teacher was like, "Oh, that they are also teaching, the kids, to be nice to people, not to hit, smack, and all that." I said, "Please, if it repeats again, let me know." Now, I am teaching my kids not to hit, what to do with their hands. Let it start from you. Teach your kids. Now, I am speaking to white people. That is in case they come across my video. Teach your kids to be nice. So I checked her comment sections out and I took some screenshots of comments as usual so you guys can see what other people said about her video. Now, obviously, her videos doesn't have any stitch, so I don't have stitches today, but I'm gonna show you some comments. Now, beside me are some of these comments. Please pause to read if you want to. In some of the comments I read, some people said she is not okay. And of course, those comments came from her fellow white people. And some people were, appreciating her for being vulnerable, for her openness and willing to change and stuff like that. But I saw this video. I thought again I should bring this video here so we all can see these videos together. I just want to know your thoughts. What do you all think? Please let me know in the comments, and thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, share, comment, subscribe, and of course come back for another video. I'm gonna see you all in my next one. Y'all take care. I love you. Bye.